My son locked me in my wine cellar for 72 hours without food or water, just so he could mortgage a house he didn't own to pay off a loan shark. He thought I was a feeble old man who would die quietly in the dark, surrounded by bottles worth more than his failed dreams. He thought the $6.8 million Malibu estate he lived in was his to leverage. But when I finally walked out of that cellar, I didn't call the police. I didn't collapse. I made one phone call that sold the house out from under him, froze every account he'd been draining, and disappeared before he realized he was homeless. My name is Donovan Merrick. I'm 67 years old. And this is how I taught my son that you never lock the door on the man who built the house, especially when that man still holds every key that matters. And the cold hit me first. 55 degrees Fahrenheit, the exact temperature I'd specified when I designed this climate-controlled wine cellar 15 years ago, perfect for preserving a $200,000 collection of vintage Bordeaux and Napa Cabernets, apparently also effective for slowly killing a 67-year-old man. I opened my eyes to absolute darkness. My tongue felt like sandpaper. I tried to swallow, but there was nothing, just a dry click that sent pain radiating down my throat. My body was stiff, curled on the stone floor I'd imported from Vermont. Ironic. I'd chosen this stone because it retained cold. Now it was leaching heat from my bones. I pushed myself up. My arms shook. Not from weakness yet, but from rage crystallizing into something tactical. I checked my wrist. My Apple Watch glowed faintly. 3:47 a.m., Friday. Day 1. Battery, 43%. How had I gotten here? The memory came flooding back. A Thursday afternoon, 18 hours earlier. I'd been standing in the cellar, showing Garrett the 1982 Chateau Margaux I'd been saving. 1982, the year he was born. I'd bought a case of 12 bottles, planning to open one for each milestone. I'd opened 3. 9 remained, aging beautifully, while my son rotted. "Dad, this is incredible," Garrett had said, his voice hollow with that enthusiasm he used when he wanted something. I should have recognized it. I'd heard it when he needed money for his third failed startup, when he needed me to co-sign the Bentley lease, when he needed just a bridge loan that became $800,000 of my money down his drain. "I was thinking we'd open it for your 36th birthday next month," I said. Something flickered in his eyes. Panic. Guilt. "Actually, Dad, can you check the cooling unit? I think I hear a weird sound." I should have questioned why Garrett, who'd never shown interest in mechanics, suddenly cared about HVAC. But 8 years of guilt made me careless. Evelyn had raised him while I built empires in Dubai and Atlantic City. Now she was gone, and I'd been buying back lost time with bailouts and second chances. I walked toward the mechanical room. The door swung, shut behind me. Click. I spun around. Through the reinforced window, I saw Garrett's face. Not panicked, calculated. "Garrett, open the door." He didn't answer. He just looked at me with the expression of a man doing math, the cold arithmetic of survival at someone else's expense. Then he walked away. Friday, day 1. I pounded on the door. "Garrett, the lock malfunctioned. I'm stuck." Nothing. The electronic keypad was dead. He'd cut power to the circuit. Deliberately. I told myself it was an accident. He'd realize I was missing. He'd come back. I found a 1995 Mondavi Cabernet, twisted out the cork, and drank. Not for pleasure, for survival. Wine dehydrates faster than it hydrates, but liquid was liquid. By evening, I'd consumed 3 bottles worth nearly $4,000. My $200,000 collection was becoming my life support system. Around hour 20, I heard voices. Faint, distorted. Then I remembered. The intercom system. I'd installed it years ago for communication with the main house. Garrett must have disabled my speaker while leaving the microphone open upstairs. I could hear everything in the kitchen. I just couldn't respond. Saturday. Day 2. The voice I heard wasn't Garrett's. It was Sienna's, My daughter-in-law, 32, former pharmaceutical sales rep who'd learned that beauty and calculated charm unlocked doors competence couldn't. She'd grown up in an Ohio trailer park, a fact carefully edited from her Instagram bio, where she was a wellness entrepreneur. Through the intercom, I heard her true voice. Sharp, transactional, cold. "Did you give him water?" Sienna asked. My blood stopped. "No," Garrett replied. "That's the point. The appraiser comes Monday at 9. The house needs to look empty. If there's an old man living here, they'll ask questions. The whole loan falls apart." "But it's been almost 2 days. What if he—" "Then it solves problems. He's 67. Heart failure, dehydration, natural causes. No one questions it. The trust executes immediately. We get everything." Silence. "How much longer?" Sienna finally asked. "Appraiser Monday morning. Loan closes Wednesday. By Thursday we'll have $120,000 to pay off Polly. If Dad's still alive after the appraiser leaves, we let him out. Play heroes. If not, we call 911 and cry." I stood in the dark, hand pressed against cold steel, listening to my son discuss my death like a dinner reservation. Not if I would die. When it would be convenient. Sunday, day 3. The rage came slowly, like hypothermia in reverse. It started in my fingers, the fingers that had drafted blueprints for 40 years, that had signed checks to bail my son out of every disaster. It spread to my chest, melting the sentimentality I'd wrapped around our relationship. I thought about the $6.8 million house Garrett lived in. He thought it was his. He told people it was his. But the deed was in the name of Terra Firma Holdings, LLC, a company I owned 100%. I'd structured it that way for tax purposes and because some instinct had whispered not to trust him with the title. That whisper had just saved my life. The temperature was dropping. I was shivering uncontrollably, my lips cracked and bleeding. I'd moved from sipping wine to gulping it, destroying bottles that had taken decades to mature. 11 bottles gone, nearly $20,000 worth, including an $8,000 Margot from the year my son was born. But my mind was razor sharp. I pulled out my Apple Watch. Battery, 31%. Maybe 36 hours left if I conserved power. I navigated to voice memos and pressed record. The intercom crackled to life again. Garrett's phone was ringing. "Polly, yeah, the money's coming. Wednesday. I know what happens if I don't. You don't have to remind me. The collateral is solid. 6.8 million Malibu oceanfront. The equity is there. My father, he's in assisted living. The property is mine, free and clear. Yes, I have power of attorney." He didn't have power of attorney. 2 weeks ago, he'd brought me documents to sign while I had the flu. "Just estate planning stuff, Dad." I'd said I needed to read them first. He'd looked annoyed but backed off. Now I understood. He'd been planning this. He just needed me weakened, confused, or dead to execute it. I recorded 3 hours of audio. Garrett and Sienna discussing my death. Garrett lying to the loan shark. Garrett confirming his plan to forge documents. At 4:00 a.m. Sunday morning, 5 hours before the appraiser's Monday appointment, I accessed my phone's weak 4G signal bleeding through the lead-lined walls. I uploaded the audio to iCloud. Then I texted Phil Corman, my attorney for 30 years. "Phil, emergency. Trapped in wine cellar. Garrett locked me in. Audio uploading to cloud. Initiate protocol scorched earth. Execute emergency liquidation terra firma property, 2247 Cormorant Drive. Contact Ligari family. They've been hunting in this neighborhood. Price to move. 10-day close maximum. I don't care about the loss. I care about the lesson. If I don't get out, the audio is evidence." Done. Send. The blue bar crawled across my screen. Message delivered. 4:17 a.m. Then my battery died. I sat in darkness, surrounded by the wreckage of my wine collection, and waited, not for rescue, for revenge. Monday morning, day 4, the electronic lock disengaged at 7:45 a.m. Sharp, mechanical, like a bone breaking in reverse. Light flooded in. I squinted, raising a hand. Garrett stood there, backlit by kitchen lights, crisp white shirt, dark jeans, his successful entrepreneur costume. In his hand, Fiji water. "Dad, oh my God!" He rushed in, dropping to his knees. The performance was seamless. "Jesus Christ, are you okay? I've been trying to get this door open for 2 days. The electronic lock seized completely. I called a locksmith, but it's Monday and—" Lies, smooth, fluid lies. He pressed water to my lips. I drank. Not because I trusted him, but because I needed hydration for what came next. "The whole system failed," he continued, voice cracking with manufactured panic. "Some power surge. I didn't realize you were down here until Sunday night, and by then the door was locked and I couldn't override it." I let him talk. I let him construct his fiction. I watched him scan the cellar, registering the 11 empty bottles. I saw him calculate the loss. Not relief that I'd survived. Regret about the wasted collection. "Garrett," I whispered, making my voice thin. I let my hands tremble. "I thought you'd left me." "Never, Dad." He pulled me into an embrace that felt like being hugged by a loan officer. "The house, it's got so many systems. When something goes wrong—" "I called for you," I said, tears welling. Real tears, not relief. Grief for the son I'd thought I had, and the monster I'd actually raised. "Why didn't you hear me?" "The intercom must have failed too. Part of the electrical problem." Another lie. The intercom had worked perfectly. "I'm so old," I mumbled, letting my body sag, so confused. "Everything's breaking down." His muscles relaxed. He thought I'd bought it. He thought 3 days in the dark had scrambled my brain, made me the perfect victim. "Let's get you upstairs," he said. We passed through the kitchen. Sienna was there, spatula in hand, scrambling eggs. When she saw me, her hand flew to her mouth in rehearsed shock. "Donovan, thank God. We were so worried." No locksmith had been called, but I nodded, playing the grateful patriarch. They sat me at the table. Between us, partially hidden under a newspaper, I noticed papers. Legal documents. "Dad, while you're eating, we need to discuss something." Garrett's tone shifted, gentle but urgent. "What happened this weekend? It's made me realize we can't ignore reality." "What reality?" "Your age, your health. You got trapped in your own cellar. What if next time it's a fire? What if you fall?" Sienna placed a hand on his arm. "We're just worried about you." Garrett slid the papers out. "I had Phil draw this up. Durable power of attorney, medical and financial. It just means if something happens, if you get confused or hurt, I can protect you. Pay bills, handle property, manage healthcare." I stared at the document. Phil Corman's name was forged as notary. Why do I need this? Because of what just happened. Garrett's patience thinned. "You're 67. Things break down. I need to be able to help you without tracking you down for signatures every time." He pushed a pen across the table. Mont Blanc. My graduation gift to him. I picked it up. My hand shook, genuine fury barely contained. I brought the tip to the signature line, started to write the D in Donovan. Then I let my elbow spasm. The pen jerked. My hand knocked Garrett's coffee mug. Dark liquid surged across the table, soaking the document instantly. The ink blurred into illegibility. The paper was destroyed. "God damn it!" Garrett exploded, jumping up. Coffee flew everywhere. "Dad, what is wrong with you?" I dropped the pen, hand trembling. "I'm sorry. My hand just jumped. I can't control it. I'm so shaky." "You ruined it." Sienna's voice was ice. Garrett crumpled the wet paper. He checked his watch. 8:20 a.m. Appraiser in 40 minutes. He couldn't print and notarize another copy in time. Why didn't he just forge another signature? Because the first was destroyed, no evidence. But a second forgery with me alert and suspicious? Too risky. He needed a real notary, witnesses who'd testify the old man was competent. It's fine, Garrett forced out. We'll do it tomorrow. Print a new one. Yes, I said eagerly. Tomorrow, when I've rested. Go to your room, sleep, stay out of sight. I have important people coming for a walkthrough. Of course, son. Thank you for saving me. Something flickered in his eyes. Disgust. I shuffled to the small guest room and locked the door. At exactly 9 a.m., a silver Lexus pulled up. The appraiser. I watched Garrett greet him, all smiles. They walked the property. Garrett pointed out the ocean view, the imported marble, a man showing off an asset he owned, an asset he didn't own. My phone was charging on the dresser. At 11:00 a.m., it buzzed. Phil Corman. Don, Jesus, are you safe? I typed, safe. Did you initiate scorched earth? 3 dots. Yes, contacted Raj Lagari at 5 a.m. He's been hunting in that neighborhood 18 months. Offered property at 4.5 matters, as is 10-day close. He jumped. Contract signed 9 a.m. this morning. Wiring funds today. County recording complete by Thursday. Don, this is 34% below market. You're leaving 2.3 matters on the table. I replied, I'm not leaving money. I'm buying justice. Deed records Thursday at noon. After that, Lagaris own it. Garrett will be trespassing. Security team ready. Good. I want him to watch it collapse. I put down the phone. Downstairs, a champagne cork popped. They were celebrating. Let them drink. By Thursday, they'd have nothing to toast. Tuesday, day 5, Garrett was in a good mood. I could hear him downstairs laughing with Sienna, making plans. The loan would close Wednesday, wire transfer Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, Paulie Marchetti would have his $120,000, and the crushing deadline would lift. Except it wouldn't, because by Thursday noon, Garrett wouldn't own anything to borrow against. I stayed in my room, playing recovering invalid. Sienna brought me soup at lunch, canned tomato, barely heated. I thanked her profusely. You seem better today, Donovan, she said, setting the tray down. More color in your face. I feel better, I said. Funny what 3 days without water will do. Makes you appreciate the small things. Something flashed in her eyes. Fear. But I was smiling, docile, grateful. She relaxed. Garrett wanted me to remind you, we need to go to the notary tomorrow, to sign that power of attorney, just to have it on file. Of course, I said, whatever you both think is best. She left. I poured the soup down the bathroom sink and ate protein bars I'd stashed in my dresser. I opened my laptop and checked accounts. Terra Firma Holdings LLC showed a pending wire, $4.5 million. The Lagaris moved fast. I booked a flight, LAX to Rome, departing Friday morning, one way. From there, train to Tuscany. I'd purchased a small vineyard outside Montepulciano 6 months ago, another secret Garrett didn't know about. 15 acres, stone farmhouse, rows of Sangiovese grapes. A someday that had just become this Saturday. I made 3 transfers. $1.9 million to Cayman Trust account, $100,000 to Phil's operational fund, $2.1 million to Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. That last one felt right. I'd spent 3 days in a temperature-controlled room surrounded by luxury, slowly dying of thirst. There were people in Los Angeles spending every night in similar conditions, cold, desperate, forgotten, without the rescue I'd gotten. The remaining $250,000 would cover my expenses in Italy for years. I'd learned in that cellar, you don't need much to survive. You need water, dignity, freedom to walk away from people who want you dead. Everything else is insulation from reality. A Wednesday, day 6. Garrett knocked at 8 a.m. Dad, we need to leave by 9 for the notary. I didn't answer. He knocked again. Dad? The handle turned, locked. Dad, are you okay? Open the door. I waited 10 seconds, then shuffled to the door, opened it. Same stained clothes, even more disheveled. I'm sorry, son. Nightmares about the cellar. I keep dreaming I'm still locked in. His face tightened. Annoyance, not sympathy. We really need this paperwork handled today. The notary's expecting us at 10. I'm not feeling well. Dizzy, chest feels tight. Maybe the hospital first? You don't need a hospital, he said quickly. Too quickly. He couldn't risk me talking to doctors who might notice severe dehydration and ask questions. You need rest. I'll have a mobile notary come here, handle it in the living room. I think I need to lie down. Maybe tomorrow? Dad. His voice hardened. This can't wait. Why the rush? Because I'm trying to protect you. You almost died in that cellar. What if it happens again? I need to be able to act without jumping through legal hoops. Or, you need to sell my house before the loan shark breaks your legs. Okay, son, I said quietly. Tomorrow, I promise. He calculated. Tomorrow was Thursday. His loan closed today. He'd have money Thursday morning. If he got my signature Thursday evening, he'd still be safe. Fine, tomorrow, but don't forget, I won't. At 2 p.m., I heard his phone ping, the notification. His fraudulent loan had closed. I heard champagne corks popping, Sienna's shriek of celebration. They thought they were toasting a rescue. They were drinking at their own funeral. At 4 p.m., Phil texted, Deed recorded. Property now belongs to Raj and Priya Lagari. Security team standing by. They want possession. Thursday, 9 a.m. You still want to be there? I thought about disappearing without confrontation. But the part of me that had spent 3 days in cold darkness listening to my son plan my death needed to see his face when he realized what he'd lost. I'll be there, but not as the victim, as the architect. Thursday morning. Day 7. I woke at 5 a.m., showered for the first time in 6 days, shaved carefully, combed my silver hair back. Then I opened the garment bag in my closet. Inside, a charcoal gray Hermenegildo Zegna 3-piece suit. I'd worn it to ring the opening bell at NASDAQ when my company went public. I'd worn it to Evelyn's funeral. I'd worn it to sign contracts that built stadiums and towers that changed skylines. It was the armor of a man who built empires. I put it on, white shirt, silk tie, gold cufflinks, Evelyn's 30th anniversary gift. When I looked in the mirror, the broken old man was gone. Donovan Merrick stared back, ready for war. I packed a small bag, passport, cash, Tuscany property deeds. Everything else could stay. At 8:45 a.m. I heard vehicles in the driveway, multiple vehicles. I walked downstairs. Garrett and Sienna were in the kitchen, drinking coffee. Garrett was on his phone, probably coordinating the wire to Polly. They didn't notice me at first. Then Sienna looked up. Her coffee cup froze. Donovan? Garrett turned. His face cycled through confusion, recognition, fear. He was looking for the broken old man. He found the iron architect. Dad? Why are you dressed like that? I have a meeting, I said calmly. The doorbell rang. Garrett frowned. Who's that? I'm expecting them, I said. I walked past them to the front door and opened it. Phil Corman stood there, briefcase in hand. Behind him, 4 men in black tactical gear, security printed on their vests. Behind them, Raj and Priya Lagari, looking around with the proprietary air of new homeowners. Garrett appeared at my shoulder. What the hell is this? Phil didn't look at Garrett. He looked at me. Mr. Merrick, good to see you on your feet. Phil, I nodded, then turned to the Lagaris. Mr. and Mrs. Lagari, welcome to your new home. Thank you, Mr. Merrick, Raj said, smiling. Sharp eyes in a compact frame, self-made tech money. We're very excited. Wait, what? Garrett pushed past me. Who are you people? This is private property. Phil opened his briefcase, pulled out a document with a county seal. Mr. Garrett Merrick, I'm Philip Corman, attorney for the former owner of this property. As of noon yesterday, this residence was sold to Mr. and Mrs. Ligari. The deed has been recorded with Los Angeles County. You are currently trespassing. The color drained from Garrett's face. Sold? Dad, what is he talking about? The house was sold, I said calmly. By me, to them, for $4.5 million cash. You can't do that. This is my house. You gave it to me. I let you live here, I corrected. I never gave you anything. The property was owned by Terra Firma Holdings, LLC. I own Terra Firma Holdings. I sold the property. Very simple. Sienna appeared, face panicked. Donovan, you can't just sell our home without telling us. Your home? I looked at her. Show me the deed with your name on it. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The sale contract specified immediate possession, Phil continued. You have 1 hour to vacate. You may take personal items you can carry. Everything else stays, per the as-is clause. My clothes, Sienna whispered. My jewelry, my studio equipment. Belongs to us now, Priya said firmly. We purchased contents with the property. Garrett turned to me, shock transforming to rage. You did this on purpose? You locked yourself in that cellar. I locked myself? My voice was quiet, but it cut like steel. Would you like to hear the audio recording? He froze. I have 3 hours of recorded audio from the intercom. You and Sienna discussing whether to let me die. You lying to your loan shark about power of attorney. You discussing how my death would solve problems. I pulled out my phone. Should I play it for everyone? For the detective parked down the street? Garrett's mouth opened and closed. You locked me in that cellar for 72 hours, I said. You cut the water. You told the loan shark I was in assisted living. You forged Phil's signature. You planned to mortgage a house you didn't own. That's elder abuse, forgery, and mortgage fraud. Federal charges. Dad, please. His voice cracked. I was desperate. The debt. Polly was going to. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You meant every word, I said. You just didn't think I was listening. I turned to Phil. Are we done here? One more thing. Phil handed me an envelope. The final utility statement for this property, paid in full through yesterday. I opened it. Inside was a bill showing $847.32. I'd paid every utility on this house for 10 years. This would be the last. I handed the envelope to Garrett. This is yours, the last thing I'll ever give you. He took it with shaking hands, staring at the paper like it was a death certificate. Then I pulled a second envelope from my jacket. Thicker. I handed it to Sienna. What is this? She whispered. Open it. She tore it open. Inside, a single document. A donation receipt from the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority for $2.1 million, dated this morning. That's the profit from the house sale, I said. After Phil's fees and the Cayman transfer, I gave it to people who actually need shelter, as opposed to people who took shelter for granted. Sienna stared at the receipt. Then she started screaming. Raw, wounded, not grief. Rage. The rage of someone who'd bet everything on a con and watched it collapse. You're insane. That money was ours. We counted on it. You needed it to pay gambling debts, I said. I needed it to teach a lesson about consequences. I turned to the security team. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. and Mrs. Merrick off the property. They have 1 hour for personal effects. After that, they're trespassers. Wait. Where are we supposed to go? Garrett's voice was desperate now. I looked at him. My son. The boy I'd taught to throw a football. The teenager I'd missed watching grow up. The man who'd locked me in a cellar to die. I don't know, Garrett, I said. Where do people go when they burn down their own house? I walked toward the black town car idling in the driveway. Phil followed. As I reached for the door handle, Garrett called out, What about your legacy, Dad? The family name. I stopped. Didn't turn around. My legacy isn't buildings, I said. It's the lesson you're about to learn. The man who built your house can just as easily unbuild it, especially when the foundation was rotten from the start. I got in the car. As we pulled away, I looked back once. Garrett stood in the driveway, the Lagares' driveway now, phone pressed to his ear. Probably calling Polly, begging for an extension he wouldn't get. Sienna was already walking away, heels clicking, phone out, probably calling her parents in Ohio. The partnership of greed was dissolving in real time. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, just clean, empty calm. The car turned onto Pacific Coast Highway. Phil sat beside me, quiet. After a few miles, he spoke. Where to? Airport, Rome, then Montepulciano. Starting over at 67? No, I said, looking out at the ocean. Starting fresh. There's a difference. The confrontation. Final moments. Before we'd left, there had been one more exchange. One I kept replaying as we drove. Garrett had turned to the Lagares, his face desperate. How much did he sell it to you for? Raj Lagare smiled politely. 4.5 million. 4 point. Garrett's face went white. But it appraises at 6.8. You could flip this for... We're not flipping it, Mr. Merrick, Priya interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. We're living here, with our children, and their children someday. We build for generations, not exits. Garrett had looked at me then, finally understanding. I hadn't just sold his house, I'd sold his entire philosophy. The difference between building something real and building something to leverage. Between creating value and extracting it. Between legacy and transaction. He'd spent 35 years learning to take shortcuts, to find angles, to monetize other people's work. I'd enabled every lesson by cushioning every failure. The Cellar had been his masterpiece, the ultimate shortcut. Inherit early by manufacturing the emergency. But he'd forgotten who taught him about structures in the first place. Every building has a foundation. Remove it, and everything collapses. I'd just removed his. Phil broke the silence again. For what it's worth, Don, you gave him every chance, more than most fathers would. I gave him everything except consequences, I said. That was the problem. Will you ever speak to him again? I thought about that. In the rearview mirror, I could still see the coastline receding. Somewhere back there, my son was realizing that the loan shark's deadline was today, that he had no collateral, no cash, no options. Somewhere back there, he was learning what desperation actually felt like, not the manufactured desperation of a gambler who'd run up debts on sports betting and crypto speculation. Real desperation. The kind that came from burning every bridge and finding yourself alone on an island of your own making. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe in 18 months. Phil raised an eyebrow. Specific number. That's what the federal prosecutor estimated, for the forgery and loan fraud, if he cooperates on the loan shark investigation. You already talked to the DA? I sent the audio files yesterday. They were very interested in Mr. Pauly Marchetti's lending operation. Apparently, Garrett wasn't his only victim, just his stupidest. Phil was quiet for a long moment. You really did scorch the earth. No, I corrected. I raised the rod and kept the foundation. There's a difference. We drove in silence. The California sun was bright and warm through the window. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like an architect's first day on a new project, one with better materials. The airport. Phil walked me to the international terminal. We stood near the security checkpoint, two men who'd built a professional relationship across 3 decades, saying goodbye. I'll handle the remaining logistics, Phil said. The LLC dissolution, the final tax filings, should be wrapped up in 60 days. Send the documents to the Italy address. I'll sign and send them back. You're really not coming back? Not to California, I said. Maybe to the States someday, but not here. Too many ghosts. Phil extended his hand. I shook it. For what it's worth, he said. Evelyn would be proud, not of the revenge, she'd have hated that, but of you finally drawing a line. She always said you were too soft with him. My throat tightened. She was right about most things. She was right about you too. She told me once, right before she died, that you were the strongest man she knew, but that your strength was in building, not breaking. She was worried that someday you'd have to learn to break something you'd built. I didn't break him, I said quietly. He broke himself. I just stopped catching him. Phil nodded. Safe travels, Don. Don't be a stranger. I'll send you wine, the good stuff, when my vineyard produces. Looking forward to it. I walked through security, didn't look back. Looking back was how you turned into salt. At the gate. I had 2 hours before boarding. I bought an overpriced airport coffee and sat by the window, watching planes take off. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but something made me look. Dad, I know you won't answer. I know I don't deserve a response, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I was desperate and stupid, and I convinced myself I had no choice. I was wrong about everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally understand. G. I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I turned off my phone and put it in my pocket. Maybe in 18 months when he got out, if he'd actually learned something, I'd respond. Or maybe I wouldn't. Some foundations, once cracked, can't be repaired. They can only be abandoned and rebuilt elsewhere. I boarded the plane to Rome. As we climbed into the clouds, leaving California behind, I looked down at the sprawl of Los Angeles. Somewhere in that grid, my son was facing the consequences of trying to kill his father, and I felt nothing. Not vindication, not grief, just the quiet satisfaction of a builder who demolished a failed structure before it collapsed and hurt someone else. The man in the seat next to me asked if I was traveling for business or pleasure. Neither, I said. I'm going home. To Italy? To myself. He looked confused but nodded politely and went back to his magazine. I closed my eyes and slept. For the first time in 8 years, I didn't dream about Evelyn dying. I dreamed about wine grapes growing. 6 months later, Montepulciano, Tuscany. The sun here is different. In Malibu, it was a spotlight, harsh, exposing, demanding. Here in Tuscany, it's golden. It sits heavy and warm on the shoulders, smelling of baked earth and Sangiovese grapes ripening on the vine. I'm sitting on the stone terrace of my farmhouse, looking out over 15 acres. The harvest was good this year. My first harvest. I didn't do much. Hired a local crew who've worked this land longer than I've been alive. But I learned how to test soil, how to read weather, how to wait. Patience, I've discovered, is different from passivity. Patience is active. It's choosing when to move and when to hold still. It's knowing some grapes take years to mature, and rushing them produces bitter wine. My phone buzzes on the table next to a glass of last year's vintage. Not mine, the previous owner's, but good, deep and complex. A text from Phil. Thought you should know, Garrett took a plea deal. 18 months federal for the forgery and loan fraud. Cooperated with the Marchetti investigation. Paulie arrested last week, along with 6 associates. Sienna filed for divorce during sentencing. Moved back to Ohio. Kid is Garrett's. DNA confirmed. She has full custody. He'll be out in 15 months with good behavior. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down face down on the stone. 18 months. Not a long time in the scope of a life, but maybe long enough to learn what I couldn't teach. I don't know if prison will give him what the cellar gave me, that cold clarity that comes from being stripped down to nothing. I don't know if he'll come out understanding the value of building something with your own hands instead of leveraging someone else's work. I don't know if I'll ever read the apology letters Phil says Garrett's been sending to his office. Phil doesn't forward them unless I ask. I haven't asked. What I know is this. I spent 8 years after Evelyn died confusing generosity with love, enabling with support. I built my son a house, but never taught him how to build one himself. That was my failure. But locking me in a cellar to die, that was his choice. And some choices carry consequences that can't be bailed out, refinanced, or forgiven by a father who gave too much too late. There's a knock at the terrace door. Marco, my contractor, appears with espresso and a rolled blueprint. He's 63, built half the stone houses in this valley, speaks maybe 10 words of English. We communicate in broken Italian, hand gestures, and the universal language of men who understand load-bearing walls. Signor Donovan, he says, spreading the blueprint on the table. The barn. I think we add windows here, more light. See? I study the plans. He's right. The barn conversion needs more natural light if it's going to work as a tasting room. I pencil in modifications, and we argue pleasantly for 20 minutes about beam placement. It's the first thing I've built in a year that isn't a defense mechanism. When Marco leaves, I pour another glass of wine and walk through the vineyard. The vines are gnarled, older than me, planted by someone's grandfather decades ago. They produce smaller yields now, but the fruit is concentrated, intense. There's a lesson there about aging, about how reduction can lead to refinement. I think about the $200,000 wine collection I destroyed to survive 3 days in the dark. I think about the $6.8 million house I sold for $4.5 million just to prove a point. I think about the $2.1 million I gave away to spite a daughter-in-law who valued money more than human life. By any financial metric, I made catastrophic decisions. But I'm standing in a Tuscan vineyard at sunset, breathing free air, answerable to no one, threatened by nothing. By any human metric, I'm rich beyond measure. My phone buzzes again. Against my better judgment, I look. Another unknown number, but this time I recognize the area code. Los Angeles County Jail. The message is short. Dad, day ice day 100. I've been sober 100 days. Clean 100 days. Thinking clearly for maybe the first time in a decade. I'm not asking for forgiveness or money or help. I just wanted you to know. I get it now. Why you did what you did. I would have killed you. Not with my hands, but with my choices. You stopped me. You saved my life by taking away the weapon I was using to destroy both of us. Thank you. I mean that. G. I stare at the message for a long time. The sun is setting behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple. The cicadas are starting their evening song. I don't reply to the text, but I don't delete it either. I save it to a folder I've labeled Maybe Someday and put the phone away. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a local wine broker about possibly selling a few cases next year if the harvest is good. The week after, I'm having dinner with another American expatriate, a woman named Elena, who teaches English at the language school in town. Phil mentioned her when he visited last month. Said she was a widow, former teacher from Boston, been here 5 years. Said we might have things in common. I'm not ready for romance. Maybe I'll never be. But I'm ready for coffee and conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from me, except my company. That's progress. I walk back to the terrace and sit in my chair. The empty chair across from me, the one that used to be filled with people who wished me harm, is still empty. But it doesn't feel haunting anymore. It just feels like space, room for possibility. I raise my glass to that empty chair. To freedom, I say quietly to the Tuscan air. The wine tastes like earth and time and second chances earned, not given. I drink deeply. People ask me sometimes, the few neighbors who speak English, the occasional tourist who wanders up the hill. If I have children, if I have family, I tell them I had a son once, that we're not in contact, that it's complicated. They nod knowingly. Italian families understand complicated. They don't ask for details, and I don't offer them. Some stories are better left as single sentences. We're not in contact. Period. End of paragraph. Maybe in 15 months, when Garrett gets out, that sentence will change. Maybe he'll come to Italy with genuine humility, and we'll find some new foundation to build on. Maybe he'll use those 18 months to learn what I couldn't teach him, that real wealth is measured in what you build, not what you take. Or maybe he'll go back to his old patterns, just with better excuses. I don't know. What I know is this. I'm 67 years old. I spent 40 years building structures for other people, 10 years building excuses for my son, 3 days in the dark learning that sometimes the most loving thing a father can do is let someone hit the ground hard enough to remember how to stand. I don't know if Garrett will learn to stand on his own, but I know that I'm standing, on my own land, under a Tuscan sun, with no one trying to lock me in the dark, and after everything, after the betrayal, the cold, the thirst, the rage, the revenge, the loss, that's enough. The evening star appears in the deepening blue. Venus, the Romans called her, goddess of love, but also the morning star, the evening star, the light that appears twice, once at the end of things, once at the beginning. I finish my wine. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and check the vines. I'll meet with Marco about the barn. I'll work with my hands instead of just my mind. I'll build something that doesn't need revenge or justice or consequence, just sun, soil, water, and time. I'll build something that asks nothing of anyone except patience. And that, after a lifetime of building empires that required everything from everyone, feels like freedom. I stand up, carry my glass inside, and close the terrace door. The Tuscan night settles over the vineyard like a benediction. And for the first time in years, I look forward to tomorrow, not because of what I'm running from, but because of what I'm running toward. A life measured not by what I destroyed, but by what I finally learned to protect. My own dignity, my own peace, my own hard-won understanding that some foundations need to be abandoned so new ones can be poured. The house lights go off one by one. In the darkness, I don't hear the echo of Garrett's voice through the intercom. I hear cicadas, wind in the vines, the distant bell of the village church marking the hour. I hear the sound of a man who built too much for others, finally learning to build something for himself, and it sounds like coming home. If you believe that dignity is worth more than blood, and that some betrayals require not forgiveness but distance, subscribe for more stories of men who rebuilt themselves after their foundations cracked, not through bitterness, but through clarity. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And remember, the strongest buildings aren't the ones that never break. They're the ones built by people who learned from the collapse.